Good morning. I am Steve Weber, and I am with
Heather Holmes.
yes, and we are broadcasting live from the P squared worldwide headquarters.
Well, not really.
Not
I mean,
really.
it's my house, but that's okay.
And we're coming from Newtown, Pennsylvania today. So I got up early and took a drive this morning through beautiful Bucks County, my old stomping grounds, and had a little bit of a trip down memory lane on the way over here. So it was fun to come over. I took all kind of back roads. You follow the maps and it just sort of directs you without you having to pay attention, and it worked out perfect.
Call you the Wanderer.
That's right. I am the Wanderer. So what we're going to do is we're going to dedicate this to this show to heart-based ideas. So heart-based businesses specifically, and I'll get to the specific of why we started that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Heather just join me here. I'm going to do my little monologue, and then we'll let you kind of join in, and we'll just have the conversation about P squared and about the way your business has been, since you invented it or, started it, better part of it more than a decade ago, but probably didn't get up and running until a few years after you started it. So we've talked about that in past shows. Last time we were together, we broadcast from your warehouse a few miles away, your brand new warehouse filled up with inventory. It was wonderful to see. So before I start the monologue, let me just tell you that tomorrow I'll be broadcasting, and I don't have a guest. I'm probably going to just do a monologue only show, but I might have a guest. This is the way I roll. And so on Friday, though, Gwen Peterson is going to join us, and we're going to talk about meditation practices. And she has been teaching meditation practices, and I've developed my own meditation practice. I'm guessing you have. Yeah. So my practice started, like 10 years ago. Well, 4 or 5 years ago. Even 10 years ago, although it wasn't very good. And then the last couple of years, it really kind of developed. And really in the last year or two, I feel like I finally tuned into it. So I'm relatively new to it. But that's what we're going to talk about on Friday's show. And then next week on Tuesday and Wednesday, I have guests scheduled, Serenity Sam. And she's been a guest on the show a few times. And she has been painting since the last time we saw her. And she's going to talk about how, using the oils and paintbrush and I don't know if she's doing pencils or not, but oils for sure. And so anyway, she's just going to talk about how this has made her more creative, and so that's going to be fun. And then on Wednesday, Shani Alvarez comes back to join us, and I think the topic is the divine feminine and the divine masculine. So we're going to get into a little bit of that. So that'll be fun. So, all right. So that's what's upcoming. So now, the one thing that I wanted to do today is my monologue is going to be, becoming heart-based is what I'm going to say. And I'm just going to talk for the first few minutes here, and you'll just kind of join in and, you can add a comment or two if you want, but, and then after I get done that, then we'll kind of shift it over to your business. How's that sound?
Awesome.
All righty. So let's just say that 15 years ago, when I was sitting on the bench being Forrest Gump, I was able to experience unconditional love on a daily basis in like a large mega doses. I didn't realize it at the time. I mean, I was like at the very, very beginning, I didn't know what was going on. But as I look at that entire 15-year period, every time I sat on the bench, people just loved the character, and they loved me being the character. And I actually got to experience and feel that love on a regular day in and out basis. It was a pretty heady thing. I mean, it was like at some point, and maybe that was like a year or two into it, I went, oh my gosh, this is really super special. This isn't like the average job that you have, even though I kind of thought of it as a job. And it was a job. I mean, I was going there and working for representing the company and being the character. But I got to experience this love, and it was two-way, because I loved meeting people, and I believe that people are good. I just had that, and I experienced that. And I remember occasionally people would say, gee, do you like talking to people? And I'm like, yeah, I love it. And then I went, how could you do this job if you didn't love meeting people? And so anyway, I loved it. And so I experienced that. kind of towards the end of the 15 years, I was like, well, what do I do next? And I wanted to create something new, and I wanted to take that magical part of experiencing that love and turn it into some kind of a different business. I had worked for the restaurant for 15 years. It was coming, it was coming to an end. It had run its course. I was kind of bored in the sense that I wasn't getting to do anything beyond just sitting there having these wonderful experiences all day long, which was great. But, it was time to move on to the next thing. So I decided I'm going to become a motivational speaker. I'll develop some kind of a message. I wasn't 100% sure what it was, but I thought I'll just use the character and I'll turn it into a business, some kind of a heart-based business. I didn't think in those terms back then. So I had a plan. I was going to become a speaker, and I was going to use the inspirational messages from the movie, and I was going to take the magic that the character, brought to things, and I was going to bring that to this whole idea of speaking. When I was sitting on the bench, there was like this magical thing, and I just thought, I'll just flip it into this next thing. There's always it's always a few problems that arise. It never quite works out. You've done a few businesses. There's always like challenges. So we call them challenges.
There are always challenges.
Yeah. So challenge number one was cash flow. I had moved to Montana. I had bought 7 properties. I had like 12 or $15,000 worth of mortgages every month, and I like my income just sort of like kind of went away.
And they're done that.
And I was like, gosh. And so anyway, and then so that was the first thing. But 2008 hit, the real estate market, exactly at that same time. So my cash flow just wasn't working. I had a lot of money in real estate, but I had no money, no actual cash. And so then challenge number 2 was the actual economic crash that hit at that same time. And I'm calling that a separate challenge because the speaking industry, which I was trying to break into, went belly up for a year, just like it went belly up last year, where, every live event, or in-person event, was canceled. Speakers who had like 50 jobs on the books, every one of them got canceled.
All my speaking engagements got canceled too.
Yeah. So this was the same thing. So I'm trying to break into the speaking business right at that exact same time. And so that was problem number 2. And then problem number 3 was I didn't have my message very clear on what I was going to talk about. I was able to sit on the bench and have a good time with people, but I didn't know how to stand up in front of, I know how to stand up in front of people. I wasn't shy that way, but I didn't have my message worked out. I hadn't figured out, like, it was like kind of like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a speaker. What are you going to talk about? Oops, I forgot that one problem. And so anyway, that's those were kind of the 3 problems as I, just kind of lump them together. So at that point, I was in a bit of trouble. I needed cash, and I needed cash fast. And I switched from being that optimistic, creative, like developing my business into like survival. And within like a 6-month period, I went from like real, like, oh man, this is going to be fun, to, man, did I ever, make choices that put me in a, way behind the 8 ball kind of thing. And so, I switched from being focused on that inspiring and helping others into like, how can I just make money? And so I became like completely like, I need to make money. And my goal switched from helping others to just helping myself and surviving. And, I had to get myself out of the economic mess, and needless to say, it didn't work. And I knew that I was like fighting, like trying to like survival, and yet at the same time I wanted to like have creative juices flowing, and they just wouldn't flow in that whole mode. So then, like, we'll just like fast forward 3-4 years, and all of the economic mess got cleaned up. I sold off properties. I stabilized my cash flow. I was able to forget about my worries and kind of return to that creative mode. And I had been writing that whole time, but it was like kind of forced writing. But the writing suddenly became a lot more like heart-centered. And there was a certain point where I just went and switched and went, you know what? I don't care about the money. I have to go do this because I have to go do this. I had this like intense feeling like I can't not do this. I mean, this Gump had kind of got into me. Gumption had gotten into me, and I was like, no, this is like I'm, uniquely destined to go do this. So I have to go do this. And so anyway, I just kept plugging away at it, and there were people who were like, Steve, what are you doing? Are you out of your mind? Do you have a plan? And I kind of had a plan, but anyway, so I got through that like hard part where I had to make all these like kind of decisions. Now I still had this plan. I was living in Montana, and I had this like vision, and I was always like, somehow I was going to salvage it. Somehow I was going to, make it all work out. And so, that first 5 years, like 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, that became like kind of like learning how to like survive again, and then really deciding what was important. And I opened up the can of worms of like, well, what do I believe? Because as I was developing my message, I realized that it was hard to have the message if I wasn't 100% clear on what I believed. And so I had to do all this like inner work. And so that all was taken care of and had gotten accomplished. But in the meantime, I still had all this like residual stuff left over from the original dream, why I went to Montana. And it was just all sitting there, and nothing was like actually being used. And so the next couple of years, like the 2015, 16, 17, 18, I was like, kind of like in a, like what do I do next? Like kind of have my foundation rebuilt to go out and help people, which I had lost completely because I had to turn it around and just go into survival mode. And so then I thought about it. And then finally it was like 2018, 19. I was like, I got to get out of here. I have to go back out into the world, and I have to be, like hanging out in Montana was cool and fun. And it was a great time for healing and doing the work that I ended up doing. And it was a perfect place to do it, but it wasn't like where I needed to be to do this next phase of my life. And that's to, be this communicator. And that's when American Gumption, that idea was birthed, and it came, pretty quickly. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and just travel around. And then next thing you know, I got rid of the rest of the stuff from Montana, and I ended up back here staying with family. And here I am. And, 5 miles from where I grew up at this moment in time, sitting here in Newtown. And so anyway, it was a funny journey, because I went from being like having this like really good intention idea and a plan, and then it not working out, and kind of like crashing and burning, and then kind of rebuilding it. And so here's the way I'm going to end this. I never really gave up the idea of helping others change, but I really discovered that I had to change myself before I could effectively do that. So I had this like good kernel of an idea, but I wasn't in the right position mentally to do it. So so ultimately that's what Montana was all about for me, is the 10-year period where I got to hang out on the mountains, look at the mountains every day, and think about what I wanted to be when I grow up. And here we are. And now it's time to go out there and share the American Gumption vision.
I just love hearing your story, and I think about you being Forrest Gump for the restaurants for so long. That becomes your identity.
Yeah.
And so when that becomes our identity, that's what we are.
Yeah.
And what we show to the world.
Yeah.
And I think, we feel invincible to a certain extent. And I imagine that you were a celebrity in your own right. And celebrities feel that way, I'm sure, too. But when you think about the connection that you had with people, and you talked about unconditional love, that's what you were feeling, but it wasn't necessarily unconditional love. It was your version of unconditional love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because unconditional love to me is my dog, right? She gives me unconditional love. As humans, I think it's even more difficult to give and show unconditional love, right? Because we have our computer up here, we have our mindset. And so mindset has so much to do with how we exist and how we think and what we do in our lives. And so you felt, I need to do this now. But the key thing that you said is, I didn't really have a plan. I really didn't think through it thoroughly. And I didn't really know my own identity at that point, because really you didn't know your authentic self at that point, right?
Yeah,
I would think that has a lot to do with
oh,
it.
that was really it. And when I started at being Gump, they initially, that first year, the only real coaching that they gave me was, they said, always be in character, always be in character. And I didn't feel like, I felt like I was Steve pretending that I was Forrest Gump those first few months. And they were like, always be in character, always, you are Forrest Gump, you are. And they kind of beat that into my head. And I, like, there was like a moment when I had to kind of make a decision that I'm just going to become the character so that I can do this job properly. And I did that. And it actually became easy to do that because I didn't have to worry about who Steve was any longer.
Right.
And so I got to just pretend. And I thought about that with some of the other jobs that I had, where I was selling widgets or representing a company doing, this type of business. And you show up there and you're like, hey, I'm the guy who sells widgets, and like you're like all of a sudden the widget person, and so I became all of a sudden the Gump person. So when that ended, and it was a 15-year run, it was the only job that I had for like 15 years. And all my other careers and jobs lasted 4 to 6 years. So it wasn't like I was constantly changing careers, but I was like I was something, and then after a while I got bored with it and had to move on to something else, and so the 15 years was like, it got ingrained, and I was stuck being that. And so I didn't know how to instantly shift out of that. And when it came to developing the message, I didn't know who I was in my
Right.
who I was. And once you open the idea of like, well, what do I believe? Like I say the can of worms, because it's like you got to look at every belief that you have. And it turns out that lots of the beliefs are good things that you can carry on with, but there's a whole lot that
we have to look at our shadow side as
Yeah.
well as our
Yeah.
other side. So, everything in life, we talked about this before, has a yin and yang, right?
Mhm.
Cause, effect, so on and so forth. And so I'm talking about this because your journey is somewhat similar to mine. And as I was listening to it, I'm like, oh my gosh, like right at the time that you were doing certain things, I was doing certain things, and a lot of parallels. But I think my dog is having issues over there. Sorry, she wants something from under the thing
She'll
over
be
there.
fine.
So she's talking to us, and I don't know if you can hear it or not. But in any case, I think that the talk track in our heads and what we tell ourselves, we can get very demoralized as we're switching from one thing that was our identity and thinking we're so great and we're going to go do something else. And then, bam, you just, the universe just hits you upside the head and says, nope, you're not on the right path. And you're going to have to do some hard work right now to figure out what you need to do. And so you went through that process, which is very cool. And we've had many talks about how we went on our journey, and you're going to learn some stuff today that you probably haven't heard before from me. And this is kind of a weird venue to do this, because one of the things that happens when you are heart-centered and you're in that world, even in business, is you have to become vulnerable. And that's the way that we really get to connect with people. And that's why I said when you were Forrest Gump, it didn't sound to me like it was truly unconditional love, because to get to that place, you have to peel your layers off and you have to be vulnerable. So I know we're going to talk about the business aspect, but I think so much is the personal aspect as well, because you have to do that in the workplace as much as you do in your personal life. And I just remember throughout my career, I would watch people and there would be two personalities. There would be the work personality, and then there would be the personality at home. And once I got to know the people, I'm like, wait a minute, you're not like that at all. And it just seems strange to me that we have been trained in a conditioned space to be this persona at work, and then you get to be your other person at home, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to guess that like sometimes you liked like someone's work personality, but you didn't like their other personality. And
I'm not going to say who that is.
No, and sometimes you like the person's home personality, but you didn't really like their work personality. And one of the things that as I developed the message of Gumption and talked about the life lessons from the movie, they use a trick in the movie where it's called I'm forgetting what it's called now, but it's like an overdubbing where Forrest's lips are not moving, but you can hear what's going on inside of his head. And what was beautiful about Forrest is that the words that were in his head always matched the exterior, the outside. So he had the ability to be this person who his internal thoughts and his internal mind matched what he was doing externally. And that is genuine and that is authentic. If you can do that, that's hard to do.
That's a very difficult thing to do.
Yes, because lots of times we're like, oh yeah, that's great. And then you're thinking, oh, this is not so good.
Absolutely.
And since we're all vibration and energy, oh, that's not so good kind of voice, that kind of projects itself through to people, and people can sense that, they don't hear exactly what you're saying, but they go, I don't think this person likes me so much, or whatever it is. So Forrest was very good at having so next time you watch the scenes, you'll just notice that like Forrest will say something in his mind, and then the next words will come out, will exactly mirror what he was thinking. And so that's genuine and authentic. So that's kind of a cool thing. So,
well, I was just listening I do audiobooks when I'm driving around, and I was listening to Rhonda Byrne. She wrote The Secret, and now she's written The Greater Secret, which I told you about.
Yep.
And she talks about our mind being a computer, and that we are not our mind, and we are not our bodies, right?
Right.
And we're energy. And so that really kind of hit home with me. And one of the things that I think Brandon did it on the last time that we were talking, and he was talking about like being present. And being present is so important. And it's called the present for a reason, right? But even in the context of what happened in the past, like let's say something happened in 1812 and you're looking at it and there's a statue from that period of time, you're still in the present, even though it happened in the past. So the only thing that's real is the present, not the past, not the future.
Right.
So as I'm talking about my story, I'm going to kind of loop that in a little bit too. So I didn't know if you wanted to recap anything there. And
so I have a couple of ideas, and I'll just throw some out to you, and you can take it from there. You've before you started P Squared, you had a full career working in a variety of corporate jobs, and you succeeded. You competed in sales positions that, historically were kind of, male dominated. And so you kind of were the lone female in this, and maybe that's changed in the last 20 years. I'm sure it's a lot.
It's important to talk about that because I was when I spent my career in medical devices prior to starting my company. And this is the other thing I was going to say is we are the sum total of our experiences. And so I'm sure if you look back, everything that you did prepared you for what you're doing now. And
Absolutely.
Everything that I did previously has prepared me for what I am doing now, even to the point of having fortitude in difficult times and trying to find that gumption
Right.
to continue and do the hard stuff and the hard work. So what I was going to say is when I made the decision, and this is what I realized, when I was younger, I had no fear, and I just said, oh, I want to do this. I'm going to go do this. And I went head first into it. Now, when I say head first, I was watching people and I would say, that looks interesting. So it was going into my mind, oh, that looks interesting. How do I get there? So I was plotting, and then I would go, okay, I want to do this. So in the medical career, I knew I wanted to be in medical devices or equipment. And so the first job I had in medical was for a Fortune 100 company. And I'm not going to say any names today because I don't think that's fair to the companies, but it's on my LinkedIn profile anyway. But the moral of the story is I was the token female out of all of their divisions in sales. 6 divisions.
Wow.
Fortune 100 company, token female. And that says a lot, right? And I came in, and I do believe I was heart-centered. I was very sensitive. My mom was sensitive. My parents allowed that and allowed me to be myself. And I got in there and I learned very quickly, oh, no. You cannot wear your heart on your sleeve right now. You better buck up and be a man. You better be, in your ego state. And that was a protective mode, right? It becomes a protective mode a lot of times. And if you want to move forward in careers or in corporations. And so I learned that very quickly. And then throughout my career, there were things that I noticed. A lot of the companies would hire people from the military or sports backgrounds because they were disciplined and they were good at what they do. But with that comes a lot of ego, right? So eventually that became me. That became my persona. I was my job. I was my career. And I'm not saying that at that time it wasn't a great thing for me, because I had great times and I met great people, and I still have a lot of those relationships. But the relationships became more important to me than anything throughout that period of time. And it dawned on me, wow, that's interesting. Why out of all of that is my takeaway? And it was because that was what allowed me to connect to people, be vulnerable, and to be in my heart space. And so those experiences along the way still are ingrained in me. I'm not going to say that they're not, but they gave me the work ethic that I have. And they gave me the ability to know the difference between ego and heart as I went on my spiritual path. So I could go back and think about those things and take the things that I needed, and I wanted from those experiences and incorporate them into my business today without the same mechanisms to get there. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
yeah, it's interesting how we throughout our career we end up mirroring the other people that are with us. And so you said that you weren't there was a lot of people who they were hired because of their strong ego and because of their work ethic. And you ended up like kind of becoming that because that was the environment that you were in. It wasn't that you didn't have your own identity and ego, and it wasn't that you weren't a hard worker, but you end up mirroring. And so think about our careers, doesn't matter where you are, whoever you're hanging around with, we become like those people because we want to get along. We want to succeed. We figure out, well, this is the way that we behave in this particular environment. This is how we get along. And a lot of times, that could be either a very good thing or it could be a not so good thing, depending on, what that environment is like, what the, the culture of a corporation or a business is like.
Well, that's a key thing, because what you, as a leader of an organization, you define the identity for that organization. And I know that, for example, when I had a leader that was sales oriented, it was a totally different environment than when I had a leader that was a financial person.
Mm.
And that was very different. And then I came to realize that I enjoyed being with the sales leader environment versus the financial environment, because that's just me. That's how I work. That's my mindset. And I think that's another thing, is identifying what type of organization you want to be and work in, and the type of people that are in that organization. And, I think about a lot of the companies out there, like, you hear Google, they have like the pods that people can go in and whatever. And I think we've gotten to an extreme
Mm-hmm.
in certain circumstances. And not to say that wouldn't be cool, but I probably wouldn't have an organization where I do that, because we still have to get work done. And not that I don't want my employees to be happy, but I'd rather have a connection with my employees
Mm-hmm.
than to fill gadgets and things that would, make them
Disappear into a pod.
disappear into a pod, or
Yes.
yeah.
It's so we get to, if you're a leader and if you're creating your own business, you get to decide, you do decide what the culture is, and you set that. And I've worked for many different organizations, and I always said, hey, it starts right at the top in terms of the tone
Always.
is set, and what the culture is, just starts there, because people want to get along. And so you get hired to do your job, and that person is the leader, and that person could either be really good and set a great culture that like syncs with who you are, or it could be, you could end up doing a lot of stuff that you're not really that proud of or feel good about on a regular basis. And if you do that and stay in that job for years and years and years, it kind of tears away at your soul, and you don't feel like you feel like you're like off to work, and you hate it, and you can't wait for to go through, but you feel like you're stuck there doing it. You need to have you earn an income to support your life, your family. And so this cycle is changing. So back to heart-centeredness. We get to, as leaders, we get to decide who we want to work with, in terms of, like, if we have a small business, we set the tone for our employees, but we set it for much more. We set it for the vendors that we work with, and we set it for the customers.
Without a doubt. And that's a good segue here, because, when I started this company, I left, I'll call it golden handcuffs, where you make a lot of money, and I was used to making a lot of money, and then I wasn't making a lot of money, and I had the housing boom. I had to own properties and did all that stuff that I could do because I could afford to do that. And I went and started this, and I wouldn't say that I necessarily had a great plan either.
Mm-hmm.
Back in 2009, in the heart of it, what was going on in the country. And so I found myself with a company that I felt in my heart that I wanted to do, because I needed to, cure myself,
Right.
Which is how most of us start that are in the health, field, in the wellness field. And, but I wasn't financially backed. I didn't know what it was to run a consumer company. It was literally baptism by fire, and I had no idea. And
and the product wasn't really
developed yet.
developed yet. So you spent the first several years in development. So
Yeah.
you really didn't even have a product to sell for the first few years.
No.
Right.
And money had to come from somewhere. So I started going through 401k and, selling off properties and doing whatever I could. And
it became a mission though for you at that point that you could,
without a doubt,
you could not
couldn't
not
stop.
do it. You
Right.
had to do it. And that was how I felt when I was, like I had this kernel of an idea that just had to be brought forth. And so you were on that same path in terms of development.
That's why I said we had parallel. But I also was going through my whole awakening and everything at the same time. And so it was like I was having to look at all the parts of me that I really had pushed away. And then I was, trying to find my identity and my authentic self outside of that world that I had been in, and starting the company. And it was like, oh my goodness. And so then I got on the talk track of, I just want to help people. That's my goal. That's my end goal. I just want to help people. And I don't need any money. I'm altruistic. I just want to go do this. And so the universe hears, you don't want any money? You're not going to have any money. And the universe wants to give us what we want, but when we don't know what we want,
right,
and we don't know who we are, there's nothing that's coming. That's why I said you have to do the hard work. And so all of these things were happening, and I just stayed focused on my path. And that's why I said we are the sum total of our experiences, because it was all of the experiences that I had to start applying. And I had to go into my ego space a little bit. And I was trying so hard not to go into my ego space. I wanted to be in my heart space, but I was still in my ego space. And it was just like this. And I'm sure you felt the same way, because you said you had to buck up and whatever. And
I said it wasn't my goal. It wasn't my goal of helping others that had changed. I had to change myself first in order to do that.
Bingo.
And so that was like the aha kind of moment when it became suddenly possible to to begin to do that. And so we have this original goal, and yet we get stuck in all the details of it, and then we get stuck in our own personal development of who we are and how we think we're we get to a point where we feel completely confused and not sure which, and maybe I have to just completely change directions, and then somehow it all begins to make sense, and all of those experiences and pieces suddenly kind of come back together, and you're like, oh my gosh, I had it there. It was all there all along, and I was like right so close on the right path the whole time. It's just that I wasn't ready for it. I had to change myself in order to make it work.
Exactly. And so, as I've gone on my journey here, I made the commitment very early on. I only wanted to do business with people that were heart-centered.
Yeah.
So I've had investors come that were not. I've had some that were, but weren't the right fit. I've had, other, I won't say customers, but other people that have come and wanted to do business with me. And I'm going to tell a quick story. So there was this gentleman who came to me, and he was actually trying to compete with me. And he came to me and said, you know what? I don't have what you have. I don't have the story. I don't have your mission. I want to make money. So I want you to come over and be the president of my company. And I was like, what? And so I asked him one question. I said, what gets you up every day? What drives you? And he said, I already said it, money, making money. And I said, I could never work with you.
Right.
Ever. Because your heart is not in the right place. And it should be your passion for helping people.
Right.
That should be number one.
Right.
period.
Right. And
First and foremost.
if we have that, if we are really helping people, what follows very naturally?
Everything.
Everything. Right. The money comes. And if you're focused on getting the money, what happens when you get the money? And you want more money and you want more money. And next thing you know, you're doing things that are making you more money, but they're not necessarily doing things that are helping people.
But see, money is not bad. Money,
No,
we
the
need
money's
money.
great.
We
Absolutely.
need money, right, to live, and we should be paid for the work that we do.
Right.
But if the focus is only on that, then there are issues. But the focus should be on abundance, and it should be on abundance in all forms. So abundance with joy. And to me, it's finding joy in every single thing, right? Even when you encounter difficult things in your business, to me, it's figuring out how do I get back to that place of joy? And it allows me to deal with things much more easily. So the people that work with me, that are distributors, even my customers, my amazing heart-centered customers, they find us. Yeah. And I think heart-centered people find each other. I think the world's changing. I think it's changing, and people are waking up and realizing that, hey, I don't want to do things the way that we've been doing it. My connection to people and not things necessarily are more important now, and we can do a lot more for ourselves and humanity, and to help humanity. And we're creative, right? We're creative people, you and I, and there's a reason that we got connected. But for anybody that works in my company, they know that I don't yell, I don't scream, I don't threaten, I don't do any of that stuff. And I never really managed that way anyway, but it's important to me to empower people when they come into my organization, and empower my customers even. I give them information and have them go do research. And that's really, I think, important too, to help people on their path, by leading by example.
When we met almost a year ago. It was in October, I believe. That was the first time you were on the show, and you were on. We interviewed you like a couple weeks apart, maybe a month apart, 2 times, and we really went through the product, and we talked about the mechanics of what P2 is all about and the technology behind the probiotic, and we'll touch on that a little bit in a minute or so, or at the very end of the show. The world, the internet, we publish things, we put ourselves out there. So there was a line that I want to read, and this is the reason why I connected with you. And it said, "I'm heart-centered, authentic, fun, and confident. I try to find joy in everything and strive to live in the present." I'm going to repeat that because you have already said every one of these things today.
I didn't even read that.
I'm heart-centered, authentic, fun, and confident. I try to find joy in everything and strive to live in the present. And in my own journey, I thought, oh my gosh, I need to meet this person, this go, because that is how I have been trying to, do things in my life. And so I thought, this is that heart-centered people just finding each other. So there's 3 things we could talk about. The heart-centeredness would be one, and then the authentic, fun, and confident. And all I want to say about those 3 is that you have to know who you are. And when you said you're authentic, fun, and confident, that told me that this person has done the work. This person has awakened and examined what their beliefs are, and done the process of shedding the ones that we've carried along but no longer fit us. And and that's never a complete job. That's always an ongoing job, but you've done enough of it to be able to say that. And then finally, find joy in everything and live in the present moment. That's really that's that. We touched on that. You talked about it right at the beginning. That's being in the present, and that's where life exists. everything that happened is like kind of an interesting story and an opportunity for learning. And the future dreams can be, things that we want to, achieve and get us up in the morning to keep us going. But if we're like living in that future, like I'm only going to, like when this happens, then I'll be happy. That's not a good future living.
No.
And then when you're like, when you're going through like the stories of your past and not having closure with them and not seeking the wisdom from them, but, like kind of reliving the emotional, drama of them, then you're really in that past basis. So the fact that you're aware of living in the present, that was wonderful. And so this is great. So.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah.
But I also think that when we are confident and know who we are, people are attracted to that.
Yeah.
And because they don't encounter that on a regular basis, probably, right?
People are always trying to figure out who they are, and when someone has already done enough of that work that they feel comfortable in their own skin, then others are like, oh, this is good. This is this person's not trying to convince me of something. They're just being who they are, and then I can take inspiration from that person. And absolutely. So that's what leadership is all about. That's what heart-centeredness is all about. It's there, and there's a little bit of a misconception about like taking care of yourself first. And sometimes people will think, well, that's boy, you're awful selfish. You're worried about yourself. But if you don't do that work on yourself, if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't put your own oxygen mask on first, you're not going to be able to help anybody else.
That's a great example, actually.
Yeah. And, or putting your seatbelt on. I mean, because it protects you. It's just a matter of living in a way that you're conscious of what you're doing. Conscious. And you can only be conscious if you're in the present moment.
That's right.
Right.
And
right. And that's what Rhonda said in her new book. The greatest secret is, I think it's just all about being in the present now.
It's always just being aware. Always just being aware.
And we'll save the law of attraction for another.
Because that's
a whole show.
Amazing
So let's wrap up heart-centeredness, and then let's just talk about the product for a few minutes.
Okay.
All right. So what else you got to say about heart-centeredness? Because you've managed to do that. You created a heart-centered business. It's not a huge business, but it's a thriving big business. It's growing. It's making a real impact on others. We'll talk about the product in just a second. I'll talk about the ones I'm using and for the last 6-7 months and the results that I've had. But what's the best part about being in that heart-centered business? Running, being a CEO of a heart-centered business, as opposed to being, a team member for a Fortune 100 company with a lot of egos and that sort of thing.
For me, it allows me to stay in a space of joy. I don't get stressed, and when I feel stressed, I bring myself back to the present. So it's for me, it allows me to find the joy with my customers. So when people call and they have issues, or they have personal issues like health issues, or maybe there was something with the product or whatever, and they have questions, it allows me to connect with them in a completely different way than, oh, my mind's over here. Oh, I'm worried about this. I'm thinking about this, and I'm not really listening to them. And it allows me to really listen. And the other part of it for me is that it truly helps me serve my life purpose. Mm-hmm. It truly allows me to stay in that space of everything that I do for my company is done with my heart, and therefore I'm doing the best I can possibly do for humanity and everyone else. So,
and
that's what that means.
you get to stay in the present moment most of the day, because you can't serve your employees, your customers, the people that you are interacting with, if you're not in the present moment at each interaction.
Exactly.
Not easy to do.
No, not easy to do, and especially with phones and social media and everything else. I see my friends that are like addicted to it.
Yeah.
And you can never ever be present when you're in that mindset. So
Right.
Anyway, that's probably the biggest.
All righty. Well, so here we have a few minutes left. Let's talk about the product. How's that sound?
Love it.
All right. So when we met, we kind of did the first couple of interviews were really all about the product, and I was trying to really understand what probiotics were and how it worked. And you did a great job of explaining that, and I read enough about it and learned about that. I thought, oh, okay, I get this, and I understood that. I think the question I asked you was like, well, why isn't everybody using this? Is there like, is there like a big cleaning product lobby that is keeping everybody from knowing about this? Because there's chemicals out there that we think we need to use to clean, and then there's these natural products, and like why aren't people using these natural products? So we talked about all that, and we won't go into that at the moment. But the thing that really got me excited about using the product was the idea that I always had allergies every spring. And, as soon as like the leaves and the grasses would start to come out in the beginning of at the end of the winter, the springtime, I mean, I would end up having to go and get the antihistamine, the strongest one. And the first couple of days I would take them, like I could feel my head buzzing. So you knew that it was like, not, you knew you were taking something that was like fairly strong. If you took the weak ones, it didn't like stop my nose from, itching and sneezing and going through the whole thing. So we had talked about it, and you had there was two products, the allergy, asthma, and sinus relief. There it is, allergy, asthma, and sinus relief. And then there was this other product, which was the mouthwash and toothbrush cleaner retainer, and I ended up using this one almost exclusively. And what I did was I would get my glass, and just put a little tiny bit of water in it, and just a couple drops of this in, and then I would get a Q-tip, and I would swab my ears and my nose. And it was funny that COVID and talked about that initial testing, and I was like, you can put a Q-tip up your nose. And so I ended up, just dipping it in and doing that. And I did that for about 5 months prior to allergy season coming on. And this year, I have not gone and had to buy the antihistamine that I had been essentially addicted to using the last 20 plus years. And I used to take them even year round because I just like got used to it at the beginning. And then I went, well, this isn't good for me. And then I would wait until like I absolutely needed to start taking them. And then last year, I remember I tried to wean myself off them as fast as I could. And I would like take it every other day, but I was having all these, it was just like sensitivity. So here's the results. You ready?
Yeah.
So, and I'll just say that. So 3 times a day, I was essentially using the mouthwash and the cotton swabs and, cleaning. So I was pretty diligent about, creating a biodome in my whole, not breathing cavity. And what happened was there's only been 3 or 4, maybe less than half a dozen days where I had any kind of sneezing that happened, and it wasn't the out of control like thing that happened like for just like you couldn't hardly stop it. It was just like a little bit of an attack. But I went through the entire spring season, and here we are into the summer now, and I haven't taken any antihistamine. This product, and I say this one now. The spray My father has used this, 92 years old, and he uses it. He sprays his pillow every night, and his ears are much better. He was always complaining about his ears. He complained about his ears just like a week ago, and that was the first time he complained about them in months. And so it really decrease that whole thing. So he hasn't done the swabbing thing like I did. He preferred the, this spray. And I end up now using the spray, especially during the allergy season, a little bit more than I did like through the winter. I hardly use this, the spray at all during the, the winter months. I just use this here and it just seemed to cure it. So I just wanted to say thank you because that product made a big difference.
Oh, that's awesome. That makes me really happy.
So if you have allergies, the combination of these two products here, they can definitely help you. Now, there was one other product.
Pause for 1 second.
Yeah.
But the mouthwash is what people put into a neti pot as well with some saline, which you haven't done yet. So you can actually,
what does that mean?
Do you know what a neti pot is?
No.
Okay. So a neti pot looks like a genie in a bottle almost.
Okay.
And normally there's a packet that comes with it and has salt and saline in it. And people rinse their nasal cavities because it gets way back in there when they have sinus issues. But instead of using that packet, you can use the mouthwash with some saline and it'll go, because when you swab, it'll go to a certain point, right?
Right.
But the neti pot gets it way back into your sinus cavity.
Oh, so I can increase this
Yes,
one more level. All right. Well,
up a notch.
So maybe by next year, I won't ever have one sneezing attack throughout the whole season.
I haven't. Well, I'm living proof.
Yeah.
That allergy spray. How long has it been now? 12 years, and I haven't been on an antibiotic, which I was on 6 times a year.
So then one thing I started doing more recently is the hand face, hand, and body wash, and all this is great. This is essentially what it is like soap, right? I wet my hands, I wet my face, and then I just take this and I put like a drop or two on it. It's not like you take like a big squeeze the bottle and get like a big long thing. And as long as my hands are wet and my face is pre-wet, I can wash and I have a very clean feeling. It has great scent to it, and I can even kind of clean around my nose a bit, to help out with that. And this is just just makes it feel like I'm really clean in terms of, and I also know that it's like in a healthy way. It's not. We'll tell about why we want to use a your products as opposed to a regular kind of soap, antibacterial.
Well, because your skin absorbs 80% of what it comes in contact with. And so you are best to absorb good bacteria, right? And when we use antibiotics, antibacterials, disinfectants, we're wiping out all the good stuff. So we have to replenish the good stuff, or otherwise the bacteria that would normally be balanced, the good and the bad and the things that help you and the good molds and good fungus and everything else, becomes imbalanced, and it turns into superbug, super mold, super all of that.
So bacteria is not good or bad. There are versions of both.
Right.
And so since we don't want to wipe out all bacteria, which is what antibacterial things do, products do, we want to just create a healthy bacteria environment so that the bad bacteria can't live because there's so many good bacteria living there.
Well, it allows us to balance them, because just like us, when we're in balance, the bacterial balance is key, the only key to health. Bacterial balance, because bacteria always have the first word and the last word. Everything begins with bacteria and ends with bacteria. It doesn't matter whether you've had a virus or whatever, you'll always return to bacteria.
Let's just make it really simple. If you want to use a natural cleaning product,
there you go.
If you want to use a natural cleaning product that doesn't have chemicals in it and doesn't wipe out, the good bacteria, then P squared products are what you want to go use.
Awesome. Perfect.
I think that's it then.
Wow. You mean we're done?
I think so. The only other thing I did, one last thing is the surface cleaner. And this is basically, you take a teaspoon of this big bottle, 12 ounces, right? It's heavy bottle.
Makes 9 gallons.
Mix 9 gallons, okay? You mix it with regular water, you make a little spray bottle, and rather than using the chemical cleaner that you use, you just spray this around and you wipe it up. What kind of a cloth do you recommend we wipe it up with?
Paper towel or microfiber cloth is good.
Okay.
Yeah. And the thing about that is it'll keep working for a week. So it'll keep cleaning for a week, which is kind of cool.
We talked about that in the last
Yeah.
time, so we don't have time to go through all that again.
It's okay,
But basically,
mention
this is good. Now, one last question: could you use this like as a like in the shower if you just want to spray the walls down afterwards, rather than having to like squeegee them down each time? Or would it be okay then? Because
it's great.
There's products that are used for that,
right?
But I understand they all have chemicals in them.
They do, or they're still killing bacteria.
Okay.
So the good thing about this is it's easy. Just keep a squirt bottle by your shower and just
9 gallons. 9 gallons.
9 gallons.
So you can make a lot of these.
A lot.
I think everybody needs this cleaning products.
Yeah, go out and get P2 probiotic.
Oh, and
Jules says so.
Jules says it's time to wrap up the show. All righty. Well, thanks everybody for joining us this morning here. We do have, let's see, who's checking in. I have to put my glasses on to see here what's happening. Lori is. Lori, tell us how to buy. Yes, we're gonna add the link right in the show notes. So and here what she says. She uses a neti pot. She says. So anyway, that's great that she's participating and using this. So
awesome.
I forgot to do that. Here's how we do this. My bad. There it is. There's the link that says that tells us who Heather is, and P2probioticspower.com. P2probiotics.
No, it's not plural. It's probiotic.
P2probioticpower.com.
Perfect.
P2probioticpower.com. All righty. Well, very good. This was fun.
It's always fun with you, Steve.
Thank you.
I always love doing this.
Thanks, Heather. We had a good time. We got Law of Attraction to do. We could talk about Rhonda Byrne's The Secret, the new secret. We'll just have to find another time on your busy calendar to continue the conversation.
I'm grateful.
All righty.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Oops, there we go. Let's find the closing. Whoops, there it is. Find the closing song. See you later.